Stuff coming down on you, eh?
Yeah. God. And how does that stay out of the drinking water, right? Look how big those rocks are that are set in there.
Here comes the rain again. This whole slope is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's all coming down here. Oh, holy smokes, look at it. I think we're in danger here. Oh boy, it's coming down. And we're just above his creek. The main creek on Roddy Creek here, it's just down here, right over there. And this stuff is coming down. What time is it right now?
7, Thursday, September 15th.
September 15th, 7 o'clock. Wow. The soup is coming down. The soup is coming in. Wow.
This is all built to their engineer's specs. I can't see anything about landslides until a landslide happens by law.
Look at it. Look at this stuff come down. Hello, I'm Will Coop. I've been involved for some 30 years advocating the protection of British Columbia's drinking waters and the forest resources which source those waters. Our BC Tap Water Alliance website catalogs these controversies, summarized in reports, videos, etc. Our most important achievement occurred in 1999 when the 3 Metro Vancouver drinking watersheds were reprotected. These sources deliver water to about half the population of British Columbia. We published a book in 2006 on the legacy of BC's protection of drinking watersheds, and similar reports that followed. In May 2022, Avola area property residents Nels Olson and Beth Patterson reached out to the BC Tap Water Alliance asking for help. Their email described damage from BC Timber Sales to Roddy Creek watershed, where we draw our licensed domestic and irrigation water from. Included in their email was a website link to an April 2022 news article and a video link in the Clearwater Times featuring their plight. A second follow-up article appeared a few months later. The property owners live on the outskirts of Avola, about 200 kilometers north of Kamloops City. I traveled to Avola in September 2022. I spent 9 days interviewing the property owners and getting their stories, inspecting the Roddy Creek fresh water supply and stream channels, inspecting and documenting BC Timber Sales' new logging road access right-of-way carved through steep forest lands and sensitive soils in the Roddy Creek domestic watershed, which was pioneered in the second half of 2021, reviewing scant government documents given to the landowners, reviewing a private technical report prepared for the landowners. I returned for a second visit in May 2023. I stayed for 7 days inspecting the area during the end of the spring freshet. On Saturday, August 21st, 2021, 3 weeks after moving into their new home, Beth Patterson, alone at the time, turn on her kitchen sink faucet. She saw dark, brown, dirty water emptying into the sink and began to panic.
So that's the color that it was. Yeah.
So
And that's the color it was coming out at the tap.
In fact, all the taps, toilets, and water heaters in their 2 structures were now full of mud and silt.
I turned the water on and it was running brown. Like brown. Like chocolate milk kind of color brown. I knew about the ponds, so I figured there was something going on at the ponds. And got up to the ponds and realized everything was brown. Creek, intake, everything was brown. I'm out of my depth. Like, this is not anything I was prepared for. Like, I didn't know the area well. It's getting dark. It's been raining. Like, trying to get up, because it gets steep and it's wet. And I'd been out for hours trudging, trying to find anything. Yeah, and then I walked the creek until the fork. And I went, I can't find anything. It's still coming down brown. It's somewhere further up. I need more daylight. I need more time. I need less rain. I sprained this ankle. It was swollen for almost 2.5 weeks. Got home and basically I packed the dogs in. We had no working water. You can't bathe in that. You can't drink that. I had nothing. The dogs and I went into Clearwater, overnighted it.
Nels walks in the rain through the forest up Roddy Creek and the mountain slope and discovers the source of the muddy waters.
He got home and started the early morning trek, and he did the entire thing in rain, about like it's raining right now. Yeah, he trudged the entire trek up to the road itself, and then he came back down, and we got the truck, and we drove up there.
That's when we ran across the sign that had Wadlegger's contact on it. We called them.
That's the contact number you called?
Yeah.
They never answered, but...
They didn't answer. We left a message. He did eventually call back, and he told us that he wasn't allowed to talk directly to us, that we needed to call BC Timber Sales.
Did you walk across the steel girder here?
Mm-hmm. This is the very first time I was up there.
We knew that they were supposed to be logging somewhere on the mountain, but we had no idea about any of this, or that it was this close.
Nels saw logging, an excavator, a new bridge over the North Roddy Creek, and mud flowing into his licensed water source. He took photos and videos of what he saw.
And then the very same day, I think, or maybe it was the next day,
They
went up and put some...
Because of you guys.
Because we called. They never answered us, but they knew we'd been up there. They tried to make it look like they'd made some attempt. The silt fence doesn't even come to the ground. Kind of there to make it look like they'd done something, right?
On that day of discovery, and in weeks ahead, Nels became proactive. He wisely and intuitively began recording the destruction and mess.
A bunch of trees cut right into my drainage. Absolutely unnecessary to put in their road. Instead they cut right to the creek. They left a lot of trees on this side of the bank, even up from their tape. And on this side, not a marker left anywhere. Zero silt fence. Notice there's no boundary ribbons because they clearly went way past where they were supposed to. Zero silt fence on this side that's doing anything. Trees cut right in the drainage for no reason. Just a giant pile of silt. Here we have a creek popping out of the ground because of the road cut. Absolutely no silt mitigation. Big cut slopes. Open ditches. There really isn't even a ditch on this side. I think that might carry a little bit of salt. This whole landing draining right down here into the ditch, through the culvert, into the forest. Not a stitch of silt fencing or mitigation at all. All of this draining through the road, big water bar made. Gravel's out here. Well, they put in a holding pit since I was here last. No silt fence anywhere. Yeah, you can see the running water there. Flows right down past all these big spoil piles over a very steep bank directly into the creek. Enormous unstable fill slope. Pouring mud into the forest. See, it's constantly flowing. And it joins the creek. We got massive erosion. This flows through the moss and the forest floor until it joins the creek. I have pictures from weeks ago where this was just starting to happen. Creek flow full of silt patches now. Really murky. Here's another creek full of fresh silt. There's an area full of silt. No active creek, and yet the forest floor is full of gravel and silt. And if we follow this tongue of silt, let's see. Gravel under the devil's butt still. There's a tributary to our creek. More silt piles. I would guess we are half a kilometer from the road now, as the crow flies, not as the creek meanders.
So the 22nd of September would have been the fourth time that I requested a hydrologist and a geologist out to check the road system, to check the waterway itself, and figure those things out. And
You had been requesting this already.
yes,
And when was the first time you requested it?
the very first time we talked to them back August 26th.
And what did they say?
They kept saying that it had already been done.
And I said, no, I want a new one done. I want a new one out here. I want someone else out here to look at what's happened and I want to know what the creek is going to have to deal with, how long the sedimentation is going to be within the creek system so that every time it rains,
Proper questions.
it comes up again. I want to know what the long-term effects of this problem that you created already is going to cause. I don't want to know what they already thought previously. I want a new one to tell me what's going on with the system now and how long this is going to be a problem and how we can address the problem.
And their answer?
And their answer continued to be, we've already had someone out, we've already had this done.
They kept throwing that at you.
Yeah, it wasn't up to them, essentially.
This is BC Timber Sales?
Yeah. And so,
Even when the creek's running clean, it still bubbles out of the ground silty.
on November 3rd, and on my way out in the morning to go to work, I passed 3 to 5 trucks headed up to go work. And mind you, at this point, it's been raining for 2 weeks straight. Yeah, 2 weeks. We've not had a day of sunshine. And it is pouring rain that morning. They're going up to work. I called Andrew at 8 a.m. and was basically told him that I passed a bunch of trucks looking like they're headed up to work. There's absolutely no way that they should be working, that it has been raining for 2 weeks, that it is absolutely pouring, that there is no way that it is environmentally friendly conditions for them to be doing anything near the watersheds whatsoever. And that I was very concerned that I was going to get home from work and not have any water. Right? That it was going to just be screwed over again because they were going to go work in it anyway. And he guaranteed me that they had an environmental monitor and that nobody would be doing work if the environmental monitor didn't say that they could.
Did he file a report as an environmental monitor?
None that we've ever seen.
Did he take pictures?
None that we've ever
as an
seen.
Environmental monitor?
None that we've ever seen. And I got home that day, and this is the color of the water out of my tap. Yeah, that's a glass mason jar. That's the water coming out of our tap. And I lost my cool. It is the 2 phone calls that I have made where I actually swore at BC Timber Sales individuals. I left very unpleasant, very unhappy messages. So yeah, I lost my cool, basically. That particular day, I contacted the Forest Practices Board and got all of the application to submit an investigation. I contacted our MLA. I contacted everyone. And I apologize. I'm gonna get upset, but just ignore it. It was a lot. He was gone. There's no water. I'm supposed to be at work again the next day. Like, it was just super shitty, and it still is. And it's not easy to own 18 and a half acres and be the only one home 90% of the time to begin with. And work on top of it. And then to voice my concerns and be ignored. It wasn't just an oversight. It's not that they went to work and they're like, oh, it's probably gonna be okay. They literally just ignored everything. And it's so frustrating because there's nothing else to do. I turned in our 3rd natural resource violation ticket that day and nothing happened. Nothing still happened. And I took pictures of everything. That's the sample that we sent in after I had been working all day. Mind you, I left at 7 in the morning to get to work on time. And I got home at like 4:30 because I'd been working all day. And then I came home to that and had to deal with that and dogs and no water.
And this was before they were supplying us with water.
Yeah,
too,
this
right?
is before there's any supply of water.
When did that begin?
Not until well after this. So when this all went down, I basically, I took the sample and then I went and got second.
This is the first time you guys took a sample.
Yeah.
The first time.
Yeah.
And that's this result.
And that's that result. I have a whole collection of other ones that I need to take in, but
and you
getting down to Kamloops on a day.
You had to drive to Kamloops.
Mind you, I worked all day. I came home and did all of this. Shut everything down that I could shut down to minimize the damage that it was doing. I turned our water heaters off, etc. I loaded up the dogs and I went to Clearwater, brought the sample with, and his sister volunteered to take it with. She submitted it, and it's not like it's cheap, right? Like, throughout all of this, like, this is all out of pocket for us. And it's not like we were making a whole heck of a lot of money at the time. I couldn't even work all of the times that I was called in to work because I was busy dealing with all of this. Paying for water samples, it's like $300 a sample. It's not cheap.
Plus the drive down and back.
And they didn't compensate you for paying that water sample.
No, they claim we falsified it.
After they came out is when they started talking about delivering water in the jugs, the little 5-gallon. Bringing those out is after this meeting that they had with Nils.
This is the 16th or whatever?
Yeah, the 18th, somewhere in there, that chunk of time. So after that is when they started talking about being willing to drop off water and bring out water and everything.
That's because of the Forest Practice Board
Yeah.
guy was here.
absolutely.
Was his
He was
input,
very
his
impressed.
uneasiness about what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
The
not impressed by what they
19th
were
would
up
be.
Nels scouts out and inspects the new Upper Roddy Creek Forest Service Road while it was raining. He does so a week before a November 18th special meeting and tour with the Forest Practice Board representative, a tour joined by BC Timber Sales representatives. He discovers the newly added road building section above his property in Roddy Creek. Despite a BC Timber Sales wet weather shutdown order, the new section of road was pioneered during snow and rainfall events. The arrow shows Nell's route in on the new Roddy Creek Forest Service Road from the main Avola Mountain Forest Service Road. The arrows show mud and silt water runoff directions for new road and ditches observed by Nels.
That's flowing right into my creek. Springs coming right out of the rock. They blew up. They would have exposed these springs the first couple blasts. This is all right above my creek.
This is a 180-degree panorama image created from Nels' video. Roddy Creek is in the middle of the image. Note the very steep slopes on either side of Roddy Creek. This slope would later be nicknamed the Wall of Shame. Here's a bird's eye view of Nels' property and the location of the upper road he walked on November 12th.
That's where that mud patch is. Right there, where my creek is. Super steep all the way down. Can't even see the slope. Here we are on the other side of the creek, where they accessed from an area they said they couldn't haul stuff in from. No silt fencing. No erosion control of any type, really. Well, can't even go walk down there. It's too loose. You can see water's just pouring right down into the gully. Absolutely no attempted erosion control at all, again. Well, that's just oozing out of a little spring up there under the moss. And right down into that culvert. Down into the forest. You can hear the mud going through the culvert. Here's another spring they cut open. Zero erosion control. They just cut a water bar through the road. They can pour down and fill this ditch and go right down into my creek again. Then we have another place where they just made a water bar. Let all the water saturate the forest down here. And there's another spot. You go slop over there. There's my boots. As soon as you step down. Pouring right down to my creek. That's where that big creek's running through. All these pools about to completely overflow. Here comes the machine working where they're not supposed to be. On roads they said that they couldn't use to get in and out of here. There's more machinery working up above. I can hear them, but you probably can't over there. Here they have other machinery in the road cut.
Here's the route in the contractor used to bring in the machinery to pioneer the Upper Roddy Creek Forest Service Road. The contractor used the very steep and narrow BC Hydro tote road. The upper road temporarily ends here, with more road pioneering planned further up the slope. The bird's eye view of the property, the new upper road, the Roddy Creek watershed boundary in blue and water runoff directions, and the proposed logging blocks in yellow. BC Timber Sales, a provincial government logging corporation, previously known as the Small Business Forest Enterprise Program, was created in 2003 by the BC Liberal Party administration under a new deregulatory forest resource mandate.
We operate in 12 business areas throughout the province and employ more than 600 staff in 33 communities. BCTS is a self-financing program within British Columbia's Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development. Most of the land in British Columbia is public, and more than half of public land is provincial forests. The provincial chief forester determines how much of the timber on public lands can be sustainably harvested. This is referred to as the Allowable Annual Cut, or the AAC.
BC Timber Sales logging plans have often come under public criticism, subject to public and private audits and legal disputes. Recently, in October 2022, hours before a lawsuit trial proceeding in the Supreme Court, BC Timber Sales offered a $300,000 settlement agreement to plaintiff residents who live near the town of Smithers. Ray Chepeniuk and Sonia Sawchuk had launched the lawsuit in 2014, claiming that BC Timber Sales, the provincial crown agency responsible for auctioning about 20% of BC's allowable annual cut, was negligent in its failure to take reasonable care to ensure their property in northwestern BC would not be damaged by the logging. By avoiding the Supreme Court trial at the last possible moment and potentially embarrassing evidentiary process, the news article stated that, quote, the province's 2015 response to the civil claim denies negligence and denies that the province owed the couple a duty of care. It says BC Timber Sales engaged in a planning process typical for forest operations in BC, including assessing conditions at the watershed and engaging a hydrologist to provide advice. University of British Columbia professor Eunice Alila, in a 70-page long court affidavit argument, stated that logging operations were the culprit which supercharged water runoff flows. This story takes place within the BC Timber Sales Kamloops business area, within the Avola operating unit. The Town of Avola is located on the Yellowhead Highway north of Kamloops City, next to the North Thompson River. The community is nestled at the bottom of the Avola Creek watershed. Originally a railway town, it later became a logging town with a population of a few thousand people. KP Wood Products Company Limited, which managed a sawmill in Avola since June 1967, was a subsidiary of Kamloops Pulp and Paper Company Limited, a subsidiary of Weyerhaeuser, the American private timber company. In 1971, Kamloops Pulp and Paper was renamed as Weyerhaeuser Canada Limited. An agreement had been made by concerned township citizens for the company to stay out of Avola and neighboring watersheds. On March 21, 2014, BC Timber Sales resource planner Frank Kohlberger sent letter and map notifications to Avola area residents for input about new logging development proposals. A controversial plan was already hatched by BC Timber Sales in 2014 to log inside the Avola community drinking watershed and just above the water supply intake. BC Timber Sales planning foresters decided against invading the Avola watershed for the time being, and instead made plans in 2018 to invade the Roddy Creek domestic watershed next door. In August 1920, a forest fire ignited by careless humans burned the forest slopes from Avola Creek northward. The extent of the fire, which burned from the mountaintops down to the Thompson River, is shown here, outlined in yellow dashed lines, from a 1952 government aerial photo. In this 1975 aerial photo, 55 years after the fire event, it shows the recent development right-of-way for a BC Hydro electrical transmission line. It also shows the recently developed Avola Mountain Forest Service Road, which travels up the mountain to access the high-elevation forests of the Mad River watershed. The 1979 aerial photo shows the advanced Clearcut mining in the Mad River watershed, home to previous large herds of mountain caribou. From the late 1960s to the present, the BC government's Forest Service pioneered logging roads and open timber mining of the surrounding undisturbed interior mountain rainforests, habitat for endangered mountain caribou. During the mining rush of timber, the Forest Service and the logging industry stayed out of the Avola and Roddy drinking watersheds. By 2004, as shown in the color aerial photo, the regenerated maturing mixed forest formed after the big fire were approaching a state hydrologists refer to as hydrologic recovery, meaning that the forest streams and underground spring networks were returning to a state of former balance. During the industrial timber mining era, loggers stayed away from the steep mountain drinking water sources of Avola Creek and watershed drainages to the north for other water users. During my stay at Roddy Creek, I found evidence of the 1920 fire. I photographed a remnant red cedar trunk survivor resting next to the south branch of Roddy Creek at the bottom of the steep slope below the new Roddy Creek Road.
Apologize that you have shitty water, and I am not disagreeing that this is
I mean, I'll
good.
make you a cup.
Carry
You
on.
could have stopped before you even started into my drainage. We knew it was a problem before you even started logging that hill that comes into this creek. They didn't even have an environmental monitor here, did they?
on
Not
the
to
first,
begin with.
the first incident on the 21st of August.
They didn't call us. They didn't have an environmental monitor, and that's when they did all the damage.
Yeah, that was.
And you've let them just carry on since then.
So we've already, since it's been started, we've put a lot of work into trying to control the sediment. And I think it's been pretty good. But could there be room for improvement? Yeah, I think so.
You keep admitting to problems and then pushing forward until we raise more and more hell. You're basically ignoring us for all intents and purposes. From the understanding I had, you're supposed to contact us before you started, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And you weren't supposed to work when it was wet, correct?
And high water.
So there is
Supposed to stay out of it when it's wet?
So there is a water, there is a, what's it called, the water shutdown if there's X amount of,
Yeah, pretty much a
wet weather shutdown.
where you get
And this hasn't been wet weather?
Well, so they are shut down in your catchment area right now.
Yeah.
So there's,
Since we've raised a hell of a lot of hell,
yeah, fair
they
enough.
didn't stop
No,
until
fair
we
enough.
pushed every button we could. And they kept going after they said they were going to stop.
One of the challenges, though, too, is trying to make things better. Is almost can make things worse as well. Like if you're like, hey, let's put more silt fences in. Well, it means you got to dig up more. Sometimes you're disturbed.
It's a project that never should have been started, so now we're in a...
I'm open to suggestions if you guys have any other ideas.
I definitely don't think you should be logging up there. That's going to wreck everything even worse. You know that.
We put straw to stop the rain pellets, the raindrops from eroding.
Well, they keep underestimating everything too. If you go up there today, the water's
gonna
just
go up
flowing
there today.
around and over all of that shit.
So my goal here is how do we find a way forward? So what do you see as a solution moving forward? So my proposal was, because one
Fix
of
the
the
creek. This is all
conversations here-
spring-fed creeks, man. There's springs all through this. You pull all the trees off and you cut in that road, it's all going to be garbage.
So what do you see as a way forward for you for a solution?
Remitigate the road. Get
As
out
in
of
tear
there.
it apart?
Yeah, get out of there.
It's not gonna happen.
Okay.
Well,
That's what I see as a solution. Like, what's the attraction here? You get these old growth trees. It's so steep, man. That soil's not going to stay up. The solutions aren't solutions. The water's been good my entire life.
So we're hoping,
I bought it on that assumption. We were told that this wasn't going to ruin the water. Get the water back to the way it's supposed to be.
working on it.
I've never had to treat their water ever in the past for this project. Never had to do anything. I haven't even started logging yet. This is really high quality water before it all got messed up. Apparently the dogs get sick from the water now. They can't even drink it. I grew up out here, they've always just drank this water. It's never been a problem. We'd like the water tested every day or two, especially when it's raining. After they blasted, you could see a mayonnaise substance coming out of the rock, where all the springs are in that rock. I think that's what's added all this heavy metals to it. I feel like the minute you throw in a well, you're just really gonna shit all over this.
I flushed our water heater twice in the last week. I've not been able to do laundry. I didn't do dishes for a week because the water wasn't clear enough to do dishes. Realistically, watching even my dogs turn away from it and then try and drink out of the creek and everything else, and being violently ill for days. Big day-to-day life issues. Like, this should not be hampering life to the point where I can't go to work because I've got to deal with it. What about the fact that we can't actually rent out our place because our water's fucked? What about all of that?
That's what I'm hoping that...
Because right now we lost well over $1,000 this month because we can't rent the place out because our water is shit. What
The month
about
before
that
and the
factor?
month before.
We've asked for a hydrologist to come out and walk us through and take water samples, and since August we've asked repeatedly and in good faith been told it would happen, and then it didn't, and it hasn't, and it's continued not to.
The
You
rest
guys
of it.
tested it prior to construction?
We didn't know when the construction was going to start. No one told us, man.
Well, I'm
We
just-
found out it was fucked because the creek was running like chocolate milk.
Well,
We didn't get a chance to because no one talked to us. That would be one of my biggest problems with your whole situation here. It started out on a horrible
Yeah.
run, and it hasn't really got a hell of a lot better. There's a lot of talk, but shit just carries on and getting worse and worse.
Allow me to interject and explain something of significance. You must understand the dubious stunt and internal game being perpetrated by BC Timber Sales against the water-licensed property owners. BC Timber Sales' hired hydrologist had specifically forewarned his client in June 2019 about the harmful and injurious consequences that its planned logging operations would have upon the property owner's domestic water supply. Therefore, it was the responsibility, burden, and onus for BC Timber Sales to conduct continuous before and after baseline water sample testing. It was irresponsible and underhanded for BC Timber Sales staff to shift the blame from its responsibility upon the property owners to conduct and pay for baseline testing. P.S. The issue and topic of damage and liability related to logging in domestic and community watersheds by the Provincial Forest Ministry is a decades-old controversy, as witnessed here in this internal 1985 government document called Liability for Watershed Damage in SBEP Areas, highlighting the issue with BC Timber Sales operations and other tenures.
Can we get a lot more testing going on for heavy metals and for the fluctuations through the week?
I can ask.
That's becoming quite a cost for us, getting these water samples right out of pocket.
So in the interim, what are you gonna do? Because I'm tired of driving to Clearwater to get water every fucking.
What about the possibility of getting, until we find a solution, that we get water bottles dropped off by Canadian Springs? Because that was something that was actually mentioned originally.
That'd be a damn good place to start. Whatever you have to do to get water here on a regular so that we have potable water every day and I'm not having to drive all the way into Clearwater and back again every goddamn day. That's a good start. When it starts showing up, that'll be at least a tick in your box. But that would be number one. Having drinking water is something that should be able to be accomplished.
No, we have tried to meet with you guys. Quite, I think this is the third time we've tried to meet. So trust me, just because we haven't met with you guys doesn't mean we've been doing nothing. There's been a lot of work that's happened.
Separate issue in and of
And we
itself,
still
but
basically have got no real information from anyone. They refuse to give us stuff from you guys.
So we have some stuff for you.
Okay.
Yep. And so we have the hydrological assessment by Michael Milne.
Right, he's the top guy.
He is the guy. He does stuff for everybody. So we have had a terrain stability assessment on this, and we've actually just had another one. We don't have the second report in yet, but we do have one that we'll give to you guys today. We have stuff from you guys today, and his
The
other
Forest
work and
Practices
stuff.
Board guy's supposed to be here this week too. So maybe that'll be, maybe we can all have a walk.
We'll give you the information today, and just so you know, like, you've asked for the papers, we provided that.
You gotta pause on that. We've been asking for paperwork, and there's a paper trail, emails and everything else. We've been asking for paperwork for months.
Long before we ever got into these drainages.
Yeah.
Long
so the fact
before
that it
our water
only
was
showed up
irreparably
today-
damaged.
So this is Michael's assessment. We're sitting like this. So he actually remapped the watershed. So these purple lines are actually the catchment area for the watersheds. I believe this is your point of diversion here. And so this is your watershed here, Roddy Creek. And then your cemetery, and then what we call Avola 7. And then the red here is the prescribed roads, the yellow are the blocks with the red boundary. The green inside are the wildlife tree patches. And then the main line.
And it's up here, it's almost all that's underground. That's the problem. You're not going to see anything above ground until you rip all the trees off. And then it's going to either drop the water table to the ground, or it's going to make those dry gullies are going to wash out. You know it.
Well,
like that's what's going to happen up there. The minute those trees get cut, the rest of them are going to fall, and that's all just going to erode right down.
I hear what you're saying. We did have a trained specialist out there to walk all these boundaries.
Yeah.
And
they figure it's fine.
See those issues, but
we can bring it up again for sure.
And then there's multiple somewhat dry gullies up through here. And the minute they log, man, that's just going to be, they're going to run like creeks. Where they're cut there, where they've got that road here, that's just pouring down into the bush, and it's going to create new creeks there. Like if you go up there today, you'll see how much it's moving. It's just pouring down the mountain.
We have been trying to move forward with stuff. Has it been as successful and got the results we wanted? No. Should you guys be pissed off? Yeah, you should. We've talked to the Forest Practices Board. They want, we're doing things that are going forward. We got a sediment specialist coming out. We're doing these things to move forward. We're not doing it and saying, screw you guys. We're trying to work with you guys.
Well, we shut down here, and then they start working this way. And we shut that down, and they start working that way. So you're not really waiting for any results to come through before you carry on. Every time.
We did shut
you
down.
say something, and then you carry on. Sure sounds like they're working right on the Roddy Creek again. When I was up there today.
Well, now it's in good shape now.
Go take a look. Go walk this shit above me.
Yeah.
It is horrible. You can't even walk through it. It's knee-deep mud. Completely, and that little bit of ponds they did in their ditches are all full. It's going to wash out just like it did last time.
The fact that, would you want to be living here dealing with all of this right now?
I agree. I am not disagreeing with you at all.
I think that
do you think anything started out right? Have we been right so far?
Well, I think...
why would we have any faith in this at this point?
Really would like to not have the mountain come down on top of us. It's already in our water. I don't want it in my house.
November 18th, 2021. The day of the special meeting and field tour with the Forest Practices Board representative, Doug Wahl. Other participants include BC Timber Sales staff, a forest hydrologist, BC Timber Sales hired project monitor, and Wadlegger's environmental monitor. When tour members inspected the end of the first section of the Roddy Creek Forest Service Road at the two forks of Roddy Creek, Nels politely asked both the Forest Practices Board and BC Timber Sales representatives to walk over and examine the other section of road which Nels visited on November 12th. His request was refused on at least 3 separate occasions. Nels was asked not to take photos of the tour participants. Instead, Nels audio recorded the day's events.
At some point, I'd like to take a look at the other side of this, where they're putting the road in out to the power line too. Because that all has huge potential to end up in the creek too. It's got to be full of springs, just like all this.
And is that within the clearing width that he's talking about?
Well, I guess
What's existing there now.
Where it's been cleared, the timber's been cleared?
Yeah, where they're prepping the road now.
Yeah.
And then, sure looks to me like there's springs big enough that it's making creeks. They're heading down the slope. I'm not sure how many are destined right into my creek right away and how many are just going to end up down in my field, basically, there at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, so that's a really important thing to communicate to BCTS about what your concerns are.
I don't know. I'd like to take a look over there today, see what the plan is there. We know that this stuff isn't getting filtered out of the water already. Cut all those trees, have all those springs exposed. I don't see how it doesn't contaminate the shit out of all the groundwater and the creek. Like someone that knows these things to take a look before today's over. And the last time I was over there, it was raining so hard, but it's just soup. Like the whole ground is soup. It's pouring over the mountain, pouring over the edge. Andrew, what's the plan to mitigate the
somebody from on site.
The silt off that side when you cut that?
Like during or after construction?
Both.
Good design.
They're just so soupy over there. That's got me really nervous. You tried walking that?
I haven't.
I fell into like my knees. A couple spots where it looked solid.
Yeah, that was
it's
something
just so soft.
Mark those water courses and to address Nels's concerns.
I think we've been working off of Michael's hydrology map where he has the boundaries mapped.
It's got the watershed boundaries, the catchment areas.
Right.
And it looks like just around the corner there is where the boundary is.
Yeah.
So the exact location in comparison to those streams, I couldn't tell you. I haven't.
Yeah.
And are we thinking that just goes somewhere completely different? It doesn't end up going under the gravel down to my property anyways?
Our thought is that that water drains off kind of towards EVO 7, and then everything this side comes into the Roddy Creek watershed.
Okay, so it doesn't follow the slope right down to my property? It somehow goes that way?
That, according to the maps, that's what.
Well, the piece on this side where the clearing is, obviously the water's flowing into that drainage, but at some point there's a height of land, right?
Right.
So one will start flowing towards the next watershed.
Got me
Yeah,
concerned.
that's the plan with.
So is that something that's going to get verified? I think that's what Nels wants to know.
I just haven't heard anybody.
3 days earlier, BC Timber Sales foresters gave Nels and Beth a copy of a contour and forest development map, at which time the foresters identified the boundary of the Roddy Creek watershed to both of them.
So this is Michael's assessment. So he actually remapped the watershed. So these purple lines are actually the catchment area for the watersheds. So this is your watershed here, Roddy Creek. The red here is the prescribed roads, the yellow are the blocks.
The hydrology map clearly showed that about 600 meters of the road Nels wanted tour members to see that day, the muddy road Nels walked alone on November 12th, was inside the Roddy watershed. The water runoff from the road area within the watershed boundary flows down to Nels' property, a fact which the forester was cognizant of despite stating otherwise that day to Nels and tour participants. The November 18th tour members all had their working boots on. The lower end of the upper road was merely a few steps up a short hill slope.
Are you guys planning on going to that side today, or?
I'm not.
No. I'm really curious what they've got on the other side there, and
Yeah.
I think there's a few more of these streams that they're not flagged, they're gonna be streams once they're cut on that side. And I'm curious whether they're gonna end up in my creek or just down the slope and into my yard, because I don't see how that actually is gonna flow into the next drainage until you get a ways over there.
Do you have any questions right now for me or for the group?
I'm curious about the other side there, where we haven't cut into yet, how that's all going to work, but
Yeah.
and where that water actually goes.
After a long journey from Victoria City to Avola, why did the Forest Practice Board fail to take a few moments to investigate the upper road despite requests to do so? Why the puzzling refusals by BC Timber Sales representatives to investigate the upper road? Why did the BC Timber Sales forester misinform Nels and the group? The circle shows the road area that was still undeveloped during the November 18th tour, the area beyond which tour members refused to walk to inspect the new section of upper road, about 600 meters of which is within the Roddy Creek watershed. BC Timber Sales Forest hydrologist advisably warned in his June 2019 assessment report that the outcome of cumulative logging developments in the Roddy Creek domestic watershed would inflict future decades of drinking water disturbance and disruptions. However, the likely damage outcomes of flooding and debris flow to Nels and Beth's property, resulting from steep slope logging and right-of-way placements near or above their property, were not identified nor assessed in government professional assessment reports, either released to the property owners or those later published for public consumption. Here is a cutout from one of BC Timber Sales contour maps released to the property owners. It identifies proposed logging and road placements above and adjacent to the property, on which I added other descriptive lines and identifiers. The red dotted line shows the boundary of AV07 watershed to the left and the Roddy Creek watershed to the right. The blue arrows indicate water flows toward and upstream of the property. The black solid lines show the boundaries of the proposed logging. Here's another BC Timber Sales map, a road layout map showing contours. The main road route is in double dashed lines with a yellow highlight. This is their property boundary. The blue line coming out of the southernmost tip of the lower planned Cutblock AM9HM is the water runoff route down to their property. Here are the Roddy watershed water flows. Proposed logging areas in yellow. Here's a bird's eye view of the water runoff channels in the Roddy Creek watershed. The yellow arrows show concentrated water culvert diversions from the upper Roddy Creek logging road and the location of proposed clear-cut logging and an added road. Here's another look at it from a Google Earth photo, on top of which I added the stream channel data, the watershed boundary in red, the road, and proposed logging. The drone follows the mountain slope above the property to a road culvert. Here's the location of that culvert. On October 28, 2022, Nels and Beth delivered an open letter to the Deputy Minister of Forests. They raised the issues of resulting flood damage which had already occurred on their property and beside their home. Here's what they wrote. It is our sincere belief and now constant fear since 2021 that the newly placed Roddy Creek Forest Service Road, the planned logging of AM9HM, the added road construction of the steep forest slope by BC Timber Sales, and the consequential alteration of the complex water runoff regime above our property will be a long-term hazard, threat, and liability to our safety, our home, and our domestic and irrigation water supply. Logging of the steep slope above our property will guarantee catastrophic flooding of both it and our water system. Allowing logging this close to our property is a de facto eviction notice. With more and more extreme weather from climate change and deforestation, removing the forest cover from the slopes exposes us to certain extreme danger. Nels understood these dangers. Avola area residents remembered the 1998 landslide debris flow in the AV07 watershed next door that damaged structures and pastures, forcing the owner to sell his land. This is an image from BC Timber Sales' July 2019 geotechnical assessment report, showing the location of where the debris flow began in the AV07 watershed in the dotted circle at the bottom. The image is a photocopy of a 1952 aerial photo. The July 2019 geotechnical assessment states, quote, "The forest and the upper slopes of the valley burned a few decades prior to 1952. A number of debris flows and shallow landslides are visible in the 1952 air photo in the upper part of the gully system in the south tributary of Roddy Creek. These landslides do not appear to have traveled to the lower reach of the gully. A large debris flow occurred in the gully immediately south in 1998. It was a natural event that initiated in the upper bowl-shaped catchment of the gully system at approximate elevation 1,400 meters. Debris deposited on a broad area of the fan and affected private property above the Messiter Station Road, and fine-grained sediment washed into the North Thompson River. There was no explicit warning narrative in BC Timber Sales' July 2019 geotechnical assessment describing the risks of proposed road building and clearcut logging that might similarly trigger the former scarred, wounded forest lands in the Upper Roddy watershed to become raging debris flows. The open letter also included a summary of the November 18, 2021 special tour. This is what they wrote. During this meeting, Nels brought up special concerns for discussion with BC Timber Sales staff related to the proposed logging of Block AM9HM, repeatedly asking for a site inspection that day of the southern construction area of Roddy Road and the Cutblock area. BC Timber Sales staff declined to do so on each occasion, making unsubstantiated assertions and comments that the layout boundaries of the Cutblock area would not affect our property, water supply, or the Roddy Creek watershed. The following are key statements and requests in their letter to the Deputy Minister. They wrote, "Will you remain dumbfounded as to why competent and caring professional foresters and engineers would even consider or authorize by professional seal such logging road access plans directly upslope of and adjacent to our property and water source? We therefore insist that BC Timber Sales take the honorable, right, and sensible action to immediately rescind the Cutblock and road proposals referred to above, and to immediately remove Block AM9HM from BC Timber Sales' advertised bidding process within the Kamloops region's Avola working unit." 3 months after the open letter was sent to the Deputy Minister of Forests, the Forest Practices Board released its final investigation report in January 2023 from the complaints filed by Nels and Beth in November 2021, 14 months previous. Here's the map included in the Forest Practices Board draft report. It shows the road in yellow above the property and the water intake POD point of diversion. The map also includes elevation contour lines. What is not shown is the location of Cutblock AM9HM next to the property. Above the map was the disclaimer, "Better map to come." Here is the better map to come from the final Forest Practices Board investigation report. It includes the AM9HM Cutblock location in light purple and the Roddy Forest Service Road location in dark purple, but does not include the property boundary, nor does the map include contour lines as provided in the draft report. Of note, the map fails to include watershed boundaries. The draft report included photographs, but none are featured in the final report. Though the Forest Practices Board final report acknowledged the complaint concerns of, quote, damage to their house and property, a complaint initially registered in the 2022 Forest Practices Board draft report, namely the, quote, Cutblock adjacent to the complainant's property, the final report neglected further reference to, discussion of, the inherent dangers of flooding and debris flows to the complainant's property resulting from logging road placement, added road placement, and proposed logging of Cutblock AM9HM. The final report also neglected discussion of added road building and Cutblock logging by BC Timber Sales and failed to include a detailed BC Timber Supply logging plan map showing all the proposed developments, watershed boundaries, and land contours. The mountain slopes carved by ancient glaciers directly above the township of Avola and northward to the Cemetery Creek watershed are steep and intersected by numerous ravines. This LiDAR X-ray terrain image of Avola, to the far left, AV07 in the middle, and Roddy Creek in purple, watersheds taken from the July 2022 William Schulba Assessment Report, reveals the underlying physical nature of the steep, incised gully systems of the Avola area mountain slopes. These convoluted terrain conditions make logging road access difficult, expensive, inhospitable, and environmentally problematic. In an area that feeds drinking water to the township of Avola and other domestic users, there has been no road access built in this vicinity except for the BC Hydro transmission right-of-way built in a diagonal direction in the 1970s from the north toward the base of Avola Creek and then southward. In the terrain where BC Timber Sales recently engineered logging road crossings over the two branches of Roddy Creek, and where it contracted the falling of the standing forest on both sides of the creeks, BC Hydro had kindly spared the forests above the new road in those stream channels for its transmission line clearing, causing no stream channel soil disturbance for the water users downstream. In those years, regional environment management planning committees ordered BC Hydro to protect and respect drinking water sources in its province-wide transmission line right-of-way corridor planning. Given the constraints of the mountain terrain and expansive ravines located higher up the slopes, BC Timber Sales had only one possible logging road access route to be carved across the three watershed slopes of Cemetery, Roddy, and AV07. The route was a 125-meter wide gap wedged between BC Hydro's right-of-way clearing and private property boundaries. It was a very tricky route intersecting two Roddy Creek ravines. Past the bridge placed over the first ravine, the second and southern ravine crossing over Roddy Creek was problematic, to say the least. BC Timber Sales hydrologist vaguely referred to this problem in his 2019 report as challenging. BC Timber Sales hired engineers to study the two proposed crossings. The southern crossing along the planned logging road elevational contour route had near vertical slopes and two sharp 90-degree turns. To manage these two sharp turns, the engineers recommended a bridge crossing. Such a bridge, which would have required a span of almost 80 meters, was prohibitively expensive. BC Timber Sales decided on the engineer's second option for a unique culvert crossing over Roddy Creek. Here's the actual scale of a typical 21-meter-long logging truck. For the north side of this culvert crossing, the scheme required dynamiting a 40-meter-long span of rock slope which had a 70 to 80-degree pitch. For the south side of this culvert crossing meant exposing a 60-meter diagonal length of forest with sensitive glacial silts, with an almost equal slope pitch to the north side, with future problematic environmental consequences. Here are two photos showing the transition of the Roddy Creek culvert crossing area.
Yeah, I don't think the fish are getting up that. That can't be good for my drinking water. Weed mat and plastic and...
These photos taken by Nels show the transition of the steep forest slope on the south side of the culvert crossing over Roddy Creek. When I went up there for the first time and I saw the road, not knowing anything else, not having any information before me, no Cutblock layouts, nothing, I'll tell you what I frankly thought. When I saw the road coming in to the bridge first and the culvert next, I was shocked at what I saw. And the first thing I said to myself, somebody's got to get fired on this. That was my first perception.
I don't see how any of this works. Even if only half of that comes down, how does it stay out of the creek, right?
Look at those striations. Wow. This
Make
is
it come apart really
this is
neat.
an ancient bed from.
From the glacial lakes. This would be from like Lake Kamloops or whatever, right?
Wow. Wow, look at all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Stuff coming down on you, eh?
Yeah. God. And how does that stay out of the drinking water, right? Look how big those rocks are that are set in there.
There's a little tunnel in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like fresh water almost.
Fresh water coming out of there.
Pretty much.
Here comes the rain again. This is just a bit of a thunderstorm, rainstorm, and this stuff is unraveling as we're watching this from up top. Oh, there it comes down. What time is it right now?
7, Thursday, September 15th.
September 15th, 7 o'clock. This whole hillside's, holy smokes, look at over here. Oh, it's coming down like you can hear the rocks coming off the top. Holy smokes, look at it over here. It's coming off. And we're just above his creek, the main creek on Roddy Creek here. It's just down here, right over there. Crap, this whole slope is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's all coming down here. Oh, holy smokes! Look at it. I think we're in danger here. Yeah, let's come back here a little bit. Look at that. Oh boy, it's coming down. This is kind of a dangerous place to be, but we're here. Wow. The soup is coming down. The soup is coming in. Wow.
This is all built to their engineer's specs. I can't see anything about landslides until a landslide happens by law.
Look at it. Look at this stuff come down.
Yeah, look at the slope here. It won't take much. What, that's maybe 2 hours worth of rain?
So it'll go right across there. Yeah. The silt runoff did wander across the road and down into Roddy Creek after a rain event witnessed here on May the 6th, 2023. Some 6 months later, May the 1st, 2023. This photograph was taken on Monday, May 1st, 2023. 2 days later, May the 3rd, a BC Timber Sales contractor installed 2 silt fences with the idea that they might help mitigate silt from entering the Roddy Creek water supply. 3 days later, May the 6th, it began to rain. The silt fences were far away from the silty water traveling down the middle of the road directly into Roddy Creek. Examining Cutblock AM85M, the Clearcut next door. On a sunny May 5th, 2023, Nels and I went to inspect BC Timber Sales Cutblock AM85M, the 41-hectare Clearcut next door. These 4 stands were logged in 2017, 6 years previous. Nels was deeply concerned about BC Timber Sales' future logging plans for Roddy and AV07 watersheds. BC Timber Sales hydrologist wrote in his 2019 report that the development of a combined area of 106 hectares is expected to increase snow accumulation in clear-cut areas and also snow melt rate, which will advance runoff and increase early spring flows. We wanted to know if AM85M might serve as a comparison or as a crystal ball to see what was possibly in store for Nels and Beth's drinking water source. This is as far as we could drive and where we left the truck, as the logging road had been deactivated and all the road culverts removed. This is the route we took. The blue dotted lines show most of the old stream courses. Below is where those stream courses cross the new Roddy Creek Forest Service Road. With no shade, the Clearcut exposes streams to the sun, which warms the otherwise cooler runoff. The planted tree seedlings have grown little over 6 years. We noted erosion of road slope soils and observed the paths of eroded soils into various stream channels. At the first switchback, there was evidence of considerable erosion and transport of fine sediment material. The erosive condition was obviously chronic, as forecast and described in BC Timber Sales hydrologist report of 2019. You can see the erosion here on this exposed cut slope. Here's a stream channel coming off the Clearcut above and through the remaining forest buffer. Further up the road toward the second switchback was extensive soil erosion, materials transported into numerous small stream channels. The conditions at the second road switchback were similar to the first switchback. Here's a view of the upper section of Cutblock AM85M as seen from the drone. I highlighted some of the features: exposed stream channels, a wetland, at least 16 forest burn piles, and former skid roads. This is what the Clearcut looks like after 6 years. Here's what BC Timber Sales hydrologist stated in his short 2019 assessment report. Based on new BC Timber Sales road construction in similar terrain and materials to the immediate north in AM85M, it is likely that measurable increases in stream sedimentation will occur as a result of planned road construction and active use on each of South Cemetery, Roddy, and AV07 creeks. An increase in stream sedimentation would result in impaired water quality at the intake on Roddy Creek, and an increase in sedimentation-related maintenance and damage to intake and distribution infrastructure. Effects are expected to be most significant during and immediately after road construction, but also chronic in nature as a result of ongoing use. Nels noted something of interest during our field trip. The patch of forest that was left unlogged between the upper and lower AM85M Clearcut was much steeper in slope than the areas that had been logged. Nels then realized that BC Timber Sales' planned AM9HM Cutblock above his property was as, or even steeper, than the AM85M area that had been spared.
Oh yeah, just soup running through there.
Is that right? Oh, look, back up. This is the one that's coming off the block up top.
Yeah, that'd be one of them.
Okay. So here we are, we're at Cemetery Creek, and this is coming from the Cutblock up above, and it's very, very soupy. And the date is the 6th day, May the 6th. May the 6th, and what time is it now? Roughly speaking?
It is 2:18.
2:18 in the afternoon, Saturday. We're about, I'd say a half a kilometer from the main road. Here you can see the location of the Cemetery Creek channels below Cutblock AM85M and the culverts on the Roddy Creek Forest Service Road. Running pretty silty. Avola area property owners Beth and Els are currently seeking legal consultation and remedies for the contamination and ruination of their domestic water supply, and for current flooding and future debris flow concerns to their property and structures from road building and future logging plans. As a result, BC Timber Sales development plans for the Roddy Creek and AV07 watersheds are on hold, and no further road development has occurred since end September 2022. As a result, it appears BC Timber Sales' advertised bidding process for the 16-hectare logging plans for TA0033 Cutblock AM9HM is suspended. As a result, the 17 large piles of right-of-way log timbers have not been sold and have been abandoned to rot along the length of the new Roddy Creek Forest Service Road. In William Schulba's July 2022 technical letter and independent assessment, called Roddy Creek and Avola Creek Watershed Source Protection, he noted the following, quote, "Through personal communications with the landowners, it is known that Avola area watersheds have a legacy of preservation and protection by community efforts and through sensible forestry management. Older second-growth forests in sensitive watersheds were not traditionally included in forestry operations. The mature forests of the Avola and Roddy Creeks are likely the main contributing factor to sustainable licensed water resources on those creeks." Quote, "However, over the past years, sensitive watershed areas have been considered for intensive logging. Due to the significant topographic slope of the Avola Creek and Roddy Creek watersheds and the unique fractured, weathered bedrock that underlay the forest floor, intensive forestry operations in these watersheds, like significant road cutting in the vicinity of riparian areas and streamside protection and enhancement area, is likely to cause significant and ongoing sediment transport into the receiving creeks. Sediment transport from the erosion of forest floors and weathered bedrock can carry other bacteriological and chemical contaminants, including but not limited to coliforms, heavy metals, and compounds that impacts pH and salinity of source water." Quote, "The recent road building, extending from Avola Mountain Forestry Road and into the Roddy Creek, is a significant industrial operation in a serene watershed." Quote, "Impacts to those licenses with a date of precedent of over half a century must be considered and are likely irreplaceable. The forestry operations in the headwaters of Roddy Creek have caused significant impact to the drinking water license FO43942 with a date of precedent of August 17, 1959. William Schulba made the following sensible recommendations: that intensive forestry operations not continue in the Avola and Roddy Creek watersheds for the protection of the drinking water licenses that source from those water bodies, that the forestry operations of the Roddy Creek watershed be suspended and investigated by Ministry of Forest staff to ensure that the road building will not cause continued impacts to Roddy Creek, including but not limited to impacts on drinking water licenses and salmon habitat. That mitigation measures be established immediately to stop erosion and road cut groundwater from directly entering Roddy Creek, and that those mitigation measures be implemented under the direct supervision of a qualified environmental professional. That water quality monitoring should be continued at the expense of the contractor and under direct supervision of an engineer or geoscientist with competency in water quality monitoring.
really would like to not have the mountain come down on top of us.
Nor would
It's
we.
already in our water. I don't want it in my house.